Mississippi. One of the few times I'd been on a plane except for traveling around the Southeast to go play a football game with Georgia Tech. That was kind of the hairstyle in those days. And as I look at so many of you gentlemen in the room, some of you look like you could have had that hairstyle too. Some of you have it back.
Right.
We're hanging in there. I'm waiting for that to come back in. I might have to buy it, but I hope that. But yeah, those were that was the good old day. 22 years old. 22 years old.
Oh, wonderful.
But almost 6'2", 195 pounds of chiseled granite. Huh? I'm telling you what. Well, listen, I just couldn't be more pleased to be here. Let me give you just a quick setup as to how this all came about. A young man named Paul Johns is a member of the Seahawks organization. Before he became a part of their community outreach program, Paul Johns was a wide receiver for the Seahawks. He came in as a rookie in 1981. And I always like to say he's the guy that forced me to find another job. Paul Johns was going to get my job if I hadn't gone on to television and radio, because he was a fine receiver. Unfortunately, his career was cut way too short by a neck injury, as so many young football players that happens to them. So he then did a few things, worked with some high schools, and eventually got a job back with the Seahawks in their community outreach department. And PJ, along with a young lady named Sandy Gregory, who was there since day one in the community outreach and public relations department at the Seahawks, they know the reputation, they know the history of the Seahawks. When I was a rookie in 1976, and a lot of veterans came into that team, they brought with them some ideas from other franchises. One of those guys was a guy named Norm Evans, who was he was our first captain. He came in from Miami, from the Dolphins. He had played on that undefeated Dolphins team of 1972, offensive lineman, terrific guy. And he started something we called the Captain's Blitz. And that was, during the holidays, as many players, as many people in the front office, as many alumni as you could gather would go out in the weeks preceding Christmas to hospitals, to senior centers, to grade schools, and not so much talk about the team as share the excitement of what the Seahawks meant to the community and what they meant to each of you individually. We learned that in 1976, and we've been doing it ever since. So when I had the chance, I live right up on Queen Anne, and when Paul said, might you be available on Friday to go visit some nice folks and talk about kind of your time with the Hawks and what the Hawks have meant to the community, I said, absolutely, I'd be more than happy to do it. So that's how we end up here, almost 40 years after the very first Captain's Blitz back in 1976. How many were Seahawks fans in 76? How many are Seahawks fans today? How many are looking forward to cheering for the 49ers on Sunday? Great. That is the right answer. Congratulations. You all win a hot dog. There you go. On your plate in front of you. It has been a very fun, almost 40 years since coming out here from Georgia Tech in 1976. As I said, I was a little bit green. I was a little wet behind the ears when I came out here. And my first year, but I wasn't the only one. How many remember Steve Larson? Okay. One of our first trips with the Seahawks in 1976, we were flying back to Tampa to play Tampa Bay. As it turned out, it was the Seahawks' very first victory in the history of the franchise in Tampa Bay that year, 1976. So we're flying back there. We win the game. We get back on the plane. We're flying home. Long flight, as you know, from Tampa Bay back to Seattle. Pilot gets on about 20 minutes into the flight and says, hey guys, congratulations. Great win back there. I know it's the first win in the franchise history. We're so proud of you up here on the flight deck. Listen, we just want to tell you it's going to be a wonderful flight. It's going to be about a 6-hour flight. Sit back and relax. I also want to tell you that we seem to have a little issue here with engine number one, a little oil pressure. So I only say this, it's fine. This is a Boeing aircraft. It's a fabulous aircraft. we don't have any problems or anything, but I want to tell you, if we have some issues, we might be a little late arriving in Seattle. Okay, no problem. So Largent is sitting on this side of the aisle, and I'm sitting right here. We're talking about the game. As normal, he had a couple of big catches, and I had almost nothing. But that's the way it worked in those days. So we go, now another half an hour later, the pilot comes back on. He says, hey guys, just want to give you an update where we are. We're over northern Georgia. That oil pressure light I told you about seems to be causing us a bit of an issue. So we've decided to shut down engine number 1. Now, that's okay, because we've got 3 engines on this plane. They're perfectly capable of flying on 2 engines. The only reason I mention that is we might be a little bit late arriving in Seattle. We could be about 30, 40 minutes late now arriving in Seattle. Well, okay, fine, not a problem. We go on for another, probably 2 hours. Pilot comes back on. Hi guys, how are you? Your captain speaking. We are now over Colorado. And I just wanted to tell you, we're not sure, but we think that on takeoff, we may have ingested a bird. And so we were having some issues with it, so we were forced to shut down engine number 2. But don't worry, because this plane is a fabulous, a Boeing aircraft, terrific, and it's made, it can fly on 1 engine. But I only tell you that because we now may be about an hour and 20 minutes late arriving in Seattle because we don't have as much. And you know, we're sitting there talking, Largent and I, and all of a sudden Largent looks across the aisle and this look comes over his face and he says, you know, if we lose that other engine, we could be up here all night. And I said, finally, somebody who's greener than wetter behind the ears than me. It was Steve Largent. He had no idea. That was just part of what it was like way back in 1976 when we were rookies. I'll tell you another quick story. This stays with us, okay? We're just in this room. I'm going to ask that the doors be locked and nobody be allowed to leave until I finish this story. And then you can't tell us so. By the way, anybody here watch Channel 7, please? Oh, good. Thank you so much. It just dawned on me that you guys may think I'm Dan Lewis. I'm not. All right, so here we go. 1981. We're in training camp. Now, we had a couple of very good seasons. 1978-79, we were 1 game away from the playoffs. So we were feeling pretty good about ourselves. So we're in training camp over in Cheney. How many people have been to Cheney watching? I'm so sorry. Cheney's actually a great little community, great town. Not much there, great school, Eastern Washington University, and they have terrific facilities for training camp, because there's nothing else for you to do but practice football out there and watch the week through. So here we are, we're getting ready to break camp. How many have been to a football camp? How many guys, gals, how many have played football? You know, you've been to camp, you know what football camp is all about. Or any camp. Could be a cheerleading camp, could be a school camp, Girl Scout camp. Did you ever have, you had lights out, right? Everybody had lights out. Well, for grown men, professional football players, young, in some cases, you know, they're old guys who enjoy going out and having a beer with their friends. We had to be in the room at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock in the dorm room every night during training camp. All right, so here we go. Yes, ma'am, you come right this way. So here we are, training camp. Sam Atkins. Anybody know Sam Atkins? He was a backup quarterback.
Number 12.
Sam is now on our pregame radio shows. Sam and I were roommates. Well, we're feeling pretty good about training camp. We're about 2 days from breaking camp, and we decide that we want to really get the coach who is taking bed check that night. Because, you know, what happens is the coaches walk around, they have a list of all the players in all the rooms, and they go knock on the door, and then they look in to make sure you're in there, then they close the door, and they check you off the list, right? That happens every night. And if you're not in your room, in those days, $500 fine. Yeah, so $500 was a lot of money then. Well, it still is, but considering what football players make now, $500 doesn't quite add up. But it was a big deal then.
I left a check for $500
we didn't
for
want
this
to
place.
miss bed check. But we decided we're going to get the coach.
Maybe I can get lunch now.
Our coach at that time who was taking bed check was a guy named Andy McDonald. God rest his soul. Passed away a few years ago, but a terrific coach. he was just the most fun guy in a quiet sort of way. So here's what Sam and I did. This is Cheney, Washington. So, in a dorm room. So we close the door, we turn out all the lights, and we, except for one little lamp over in the corner, we throw kind of a t-shirt over the lamp, so it's kind of subdued light. And it's hot, it's really hot. It's the middle of August, so it's about 100 degrees at 11 o'clock at night. So we have the windows open and a fan going, but we don't have any air conditioning. And, you know, your beds are those typical dorm beds. They're about the size of this table right here, only a little narrower and about as hard. And that's what you slept on, right? So Sam gets into his bed, and, you know, as I said, it's hot, so, you know, we don't sleep with any clothes on. So Sam gets into bed, and I get into bed with him. Now this stays right here. So here's Sam, lying in bed, and I'm kind of curled up next to him. We're both naked. And all of a sudden, we can hear the coach coming up the hall, and it's Andy McDonald. So Andy turns the doorknob to open it and check on us. Well, we had locked the door. Well, the coach hasn't passed it. So pretty soon, knock on the door, he tries the doorknob, can't open it. So we hear the key go in and the lock turn, and suddenly it becomes a Sam Peckinpah movie. You ever seen Sam Peckinpah? Where everything goes in slow motion.